Welcome to this podcast, Holistic Creators, where we share our unique and universal stories about shaping the future for the 4 Ps: people, planet, purpose, and profit. My name is Swanette Kuntze. I'm a mental coach and your host of this show. My intention for this show is to inspire you on your path to a holistic future. So welcome. Welcome to my podcast, Holistic Creators. My name is Swanette and I'm your host. Today, my guest is Frank King, and he is the mental health comedian. Welcome to my podcast.
Thank you. Nice to be here. I am in Eugene, Oregon, actually, at this moment. I have been to where you live, and it is paradise, I must admit.
Yeah.
I spent time there before I caught a flight home to Boston. There's an airline that flies twice a week from there to Boston for some strange reason. And then one night I spent the night over because I was awaiting my next cruise ship. I do stand-up comedy on the cruise ships.
Yeah, so where I'm living is Madeira, and this is really paradise. And it is a really tiny island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, but a wonderful place, and I really love to be here. And today I love to speak with you about your topic. And so for some, it is really something people would never speak about. And this is kind of really a hidden topic, even though if we look at the cases, people that have these problems are really high. And even though nobody is really feeling to speak about that. So can you give me a little bit of the overview of your topic about, perhaps you have some numbers or anything you want to share before we go deeper into your story and what the situation is at the moment, perhaps even in these crazy times of COVID?
Yes, suicide, depression, suicide, mental illness, and suicide, sort of the last conversational taboos, even though in the United States, one person dies every 11 minutes by suicide. In the world, one person dies every 40 seconds by suicide, and hardly anybody talks about it. However, I will tell you this. When I was preparing for my first TEDx talk, I have 5. I just booked my 6th one. I realized that even though nobody talks about depression, thoughts of suicide, if you bring the subject up, it's like you give them permission to give voice. I feel like the permission fairy. When I speak, oftentimes there are anywhere from a couple to 8 or 10 people lined up after I come off stage with a story or a question or something, a family member, a loved one, their own personal experience. Yeah, so it's my job really as a suicide prevention speaker is simply to come in and start that conversation, and that allows other people to give voice to their feelings and experiences without recrimination. That's what I do.
What do you think is holding them back to speak openly about this topic?
Well, there's a stigma attached to mental illness. There's an entirely separate stigma attached to thoughts of suicide. In some cultures, it is more stigmatized than others. Native Americans, Alaskan Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanics, those cultures generally, people don't speak of it out loud. People who are depressed or suicidal do not come out to their friends and family and let them know how they're feeling. So the rates of suicide are higher in those groups for cultural reasons. I have a friend whose folks are from Pakistan, and she did a TEDx talk and talked about her 3 suicide attempts and her schizoaffective condition, and they were furious because they said, and we don't talk about that in our community, which is why she should be talking about it, because there's undoubtedly other people just as she is, struggling with mental illness, and if you feel like you can't tell anybody, then that's very dangerous because, that leads to, a lack of hope, and having no hope can lead ultimately to taking your own life.
How did you come to this topic? Because, as normally this is a hidden topic, then you speak out and you help other people also to, be open with their own situation. But what is your story? How did it happen that you now speak about this topic?
Well, I've been a stand-up comedian since the day after Christmas 1985, full-time. And then did the comedy clubs and then did the convention comedy circuit, after dinner, after lunch. Always wanted to be a speaker as well as a comedian, but I could never figure out what I had to talk about. And then I began to think about my family, depression and suicide run in my family. It's called generational depression and suicide. My grandmother died by suicide. My mother found her. My great aunt died by suicide. My mother and I found her. I was 4 years old. I screamed for days. And I myself have come close enough to dying in April 2010 at the height of the recession after my speaking business dropped off 80%. My wife and I lost everything in a bankruptcy, and I learned what the barrel of my gun tasted like, literally. Spoiler alert, I did not pull the trigger, fortunately. So as I was looking at my family history and my history, I thought, you know what I could speak on? I could speak on suicide prevention. So I got some training, 3 different courses in suicide prevention. And of course, being a comedian, I have not jokes, but humorous personal stories about my mental health journey. A friend of mine said to me one time, "Hey man, how come you didn't pull the trigger?" I go, "Hey man, could you try to sound slightly less disappointed?" So that's the funny, and it makes it a lot easier for people to digest a serious topic like that if you can give them a little comic relief, you know, genuine, organic, tasteful comic relief along the way. So I am the mental health comedian.
Okay, can you go a little bit more into detail? Like you said, like depression and also suicide is something that is in your ancestral line, like the family has a lot, or some of your relatives committed suicide.
Yep.
What was the situation before, and did you feel or hear anything about them that there was depression they had, or that they were close to suicide?
Well, that was my mother's generation, and her mother and her great aunt, and then my mother's generation. That was the sort of thing they didn't talk about. You know, it's the relative was here one day, gone the next. And pretty much everybody in my family, except one cousin, has some kind of condition, is on one psychotropic medication or another. In the U.S., we say, my family is nuttier than a squirrel turd. So if you have people listening from the U.S., they'll be laughing at this point. Squirrel turd. I have 2 mental illnesses. My sister has 2 different ones. Actually, she has depression, anxiety. I have major depressive disorder, which is depression that it lasts anywhere from 3 days to 3 weeks, and it recurs. It's like a flat spot on a wheel. It just comes around every so often, and generally not situational. I've been most depressed and suicidal at best times in my life. I have another condition, much more rare, called chronic suicidal ideation. That means for me and people like me, the option of suicide is always on the menu as a solution for problems large and small. And the story I tell in my keynote is, my car broke down a couple of years ago. I had 3 thoughts unbidden. 1, get it fixed. 2, buy a new one. 3, I could just kill myself. That's the mindset. That's how my brain works. And the upside of that is, every time I've spoken since 2014, there's been at least one person in the audience, sometimes more, who had that condition. And they didn't know it had a name. They thought they were just some kind of freak. And I did a college show, for example. A young woman came up afterwards. She said, "Thank you for your keynote." I said, "You're welcome." She goes, "But I got to tell you, it made me weep." How did it make you weep? She said, "You know your story about the car, get it fixed, buy a new one, just kill yourself." She goes, "I've been having those thoughts all my life. I didn't know it had a name. I thought I was some kind of freak, all alone. And when I heard you say that out loud, I realized for the first time in my life that I am not alone, and I wept." So that's the upside. Again, that's the reason that I start the conversation, is to give people like that, who are unaware that what they're suffering has a name, and there are lots of other people out there suffering the same thing. Again, you're planting, it's not therapy so much as just planting seeds of hope, letting them know they're not in fact alone. And that she said to me, she's probably 20, she said, "I was hoping I would grow out of it." I said, "Well, I'm 62. If I'm going to grow out of it, I better get started." So that's why people ask me, because I train speakers, how did you choose depression and suicide? Well, you know what? The topic chose me.
Okay, so you are the expert by your own story and also the expert by training, yeah?
Yes, and you know, it's one thing to hear a clinician speak about depression and suicide clinically. It's another thing to hear it from somebody who can tell you what the barrel of their revolver tastes like. Because I did another college, and a young woman came up afterwards, and she said, you know, I've been in therapy for 2 years. About 15 minutes into your keynote, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this guy is inside my head. She said, my therapist is very good, well educated, but has no context, has no idea what I'm going through. She goes, 45 minutes with you did more for me than 2 years with her. So that's the benefit of having that lived experience, knowing what it feels like to be in that, you know, that state of mind where suicide generally is not about killing yourself so much as it is ending the pain. That's how I felt. That's how the majority of people who attempt suicide, they're just trying to make the pain stop.
So what do you think are the symptoms they are having? Like ending the pain is like they really have this, how can I say, brain fuck into their mind, or they feel really that they want to stop pain in their body. So what are the symptoms they do have?
Well, if you mean what do the symptoms of depression look like?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the pain is a part of the problem for people with depression. I know that my cycle lasts 3 days because I've been through it so many times. So I know when I began to spiral down that 72 hours later, things will begin to improve. But if you're not experienced like that, you tend to live in the immediate, in the moment. And the pain is so bad, and you're thinking to yourself, it's never going to be any better than this. You can't really see tomorrow without pain, and so that's a very dangerous state of mind. If you think it's not going to get any better, it's always going to feel like this, then they attempt to end the pain. Same thing on a smaller scale with substance abuse disorder, drinking and doing drugs. It's all about to relieve the pain, temporarily in that case. And sometimes the two go hand in hand. You know, sometimes people self-medicate with drugs and alcohol. But the symptoms, the people who are depressed have trouble getting out of bed in the morning, and then they kind of rally in the afternoon. They either eat too much, can't eat, sleep too much, can't sleep, and a big sign, and one you can actually observe on Zoom, is they let their personal hygiene go. So if you log on to Zoom and you see them and you think, gosh, his hair is dirty, his clothes aren't that clean, it may be because they're having trouble getting out of bed in the morning to run a little wash and jump in the shower. I mean, sometimes the simplest things are a bridge too far when you're that depressed. They just lie in bed. So those are 3 symptoms, relatively common symptoms of depression. That's how you would know. And when I speak, what I'm trying to do is teach people how to spot depression and thoughts of suicide, because you'll hear somebody say, you know, he died by suicide. He never gave any hints. I had no clue. Well, chances are he gave hints. The reason is 8 out of 10 people who are suicidal are ambivalent. They want somebody to interrupt. And 9 out of 10 who are suicidal give hints in the last week leading up to an attempt. So if you know what to look for, what to listen for, anybody can stop a suicide if you know what to look for, what to listen for, and you're willing to step up and you know, get out of your comfort zone and ask them flat out, are you depressed?
So somehow it sounds like they are totally overwhelmed with their life situation. This can be for different reasons. Yeah, you said like losing all the money, or losing someone who is very close to you can lead to depression, for example. So
for me, from my family, as I said, I've been most depressed at some of the best times in my life, so it's not situational. A situation can trigger it, like happened to me, but on, you know, every so often I just get this, you know, it comes back around, and I, you know, yeah, I feel hopeless, but I know, because I know my cycle, that 3 days later, you know, I just kind of hunker down and ride it out. Now, the upside to that is I believe that my mental illness is simply the flip side of my creativity, imagination, and comedic ability. I believe because I could teach you how to write a joke, how to deliver a joke. What I cannot teach you to do is process the information the way my crazy brain does. And that's, have you ever been in a movie theater and there's something on the screen and you laugh and then you realize, wait a minute, I'm the only one in the theater laughing. Don't you guys get that? That's my life. I'm constantly seeing things that other people they see, but they don't see it, in that funny way. So it's kind of a curse and a blessing.
Yeah.
And this week, there's an article in Inverse magazine online that the genes for depression and intelligence overlap. So there is some science that people who are depressed are more intelligent than the average neurotypical person. And I think that's probably true. I think because most people I know who are mentally ill, who are not completely dysfunctional, also have some extraordinary ability. Singers, dancers, writers, comedians, it seems to go hand in hand sometimes, that, the blessing and the curse.
Yeah, of course. Well, we have seen it in the last years from some of the very good artists that they committed suicide, and you think they have been so famous, they have reached everything they wanted, and how can this be? Yeah?
Well, Anthony Bourdain, Kate Spade, Robin Williams, all very famous, all very, all well-liked, all had money in the bank. But again, I think that sometimes that genius, there's a fine line, and if something upsets the balance, then, it's the thing a lot of people don't understand about mental illness is that it's like that Greek character Sisyphus, who gave fire to man, and the other gods punished him by forcing him to roll a rock up a hill every day, with the idea that if he got it over the top, he could retire. Of course, every time he got it near the top, it rolled back down to the bottom. Having a mental illness is like that. You wake up every morning, there's a rock on a hill. Some days the rock is small, the hill's not so steep. Some days the rock is a boulder, and the hill is Kilimanjaro. But every day, there's a rock on a hill. That's why most of my mentally ill friends are surviving the pandemic so well, is we're used to waking up in an uncertain world every day, regardless of the pandemic. So we all have what's called a self-care plan. I've been doing podcast after podcast, teaching normal people how to create a self-care plan, how to control the things in their lives that they can actually control and just let the rest go. Because, it's pretty much everybody's life's been turned upside down. They feel out of control. They're uncertain when it's going to end. But mentally ill people, I deal with it every day. So I've got systems in place to help me get out of bed in the morning, simply. But
yeah, I see that as well. Like a lot of people that are in my community have these kind of problems, that they feel that they came out of a very controlled and predictable life, and now everything is in chaos, and they have to stay at home. They don't have their work anymore. They are in fear about the virus, etc. And now it is like, okay, how can they handle the situation? And I see an increasing amount of people going more and more into this kind of depression.
Yes, and it's called situational depression. It will probably pass when the pandemic passes. The problem I see is, if you've never been depressed and you're lying in bed and you can't get out of bed in the morning, you may not know why. You may not recognize, again, that's one of the reasons I speak, is to inform people it may be situational depression. These are the symptoms. You're struggling getting to the bathroom to do a shower and run a little way. Yes, well, you know what? You might be depressed. So what I teach them is, my self-care plan has 5 elements. I'm on a particular diet. It's called the keto diet, and I do intermittent fasting. I have an exercise program. I've got some stuff at home, an old Nordic track and some stretchy bands So diet, exercise, a good night's sleep is restorative, and meditation, meditate twice a day, guided meditation, and then I take medication. And now I take the lowest dose of the particular medication I take because it works very well for me. There are normal people who are terrified of antidepressants, figuring it's going to be a life sentence, and that's not true. You know, if medication's indicated, then it'll probably be just a short term, and when things begin to turn around, you can taper off. Here's a tip for your listeners and watchers. When someone is prescribed a psychotropic medication, this is on average how it works. 1/3 of the people love it, does everything it's supposed to. 1/3 of the people, it's okay. The other third, this stuff sucks. So if you're in the second third or the third third of that story, there's now a DNA cheek swab test. They take your DNA and they match it with the antidepressants, 2 or 3, they think will work best with your metabolism. So there's a lot less lab rat, go on, doesn't work, taper off. Go on, doesn't work, taper off. So it's called precision medicine. It's not perfect, but you're able to dial in. You got a better chance that the medication will do what it's intended to do. So if you are depressed or think you are, I would have a telemedicine, telehealth appointment with a mental health professional. Tell them your symptoms. See what it is. See if it's situational depression. And then if medication's indicated, consider going on at least short term.
Yeah, so definitely before something is getting too worse, medication is always a help. If you can't fix it by doing meditation or going out into nature, connecting with the earth or anything else that you have as a concept or coping strategy.
Yes, and again, my mentally ill friends, another thing that I suggest people do is you have to, because our routines have been turned upside down, you have to create your own routine. They interviewed a gentleman who had been in the space station for a year, all by himself, except for when they brought him groceries. And they asked him, how do you live with social isolation like that? And he said, simple, one word, routine. I go to bed roughly the same time every day. I get up roughly the same time, eat my meal same time, exercise same time. I've got a schedule, and I just stick to my schedule. He said that he believes, and again, I think in the pandemic, because, people used to go to work, they would commute, get there at 8, and then 5 o'clock, the whistle blows, they go home. It was very much regimented. Now, so I think you need to, again, at the heart of it is controlling the things you can, in fact, control. And I would advise, if you are struggling mentally, share that with people that you know, love, and trust. You need a kind of like an automobile race. You need a pit crew in case the wheels come off. They know what you're living with and what it's all about and what they can do to help you. So I would say when you're comfortable, let those people around you know that, I think I've got depression. I'm going to have a telemedicine appointment. Let's see what happens.
I think that people somehow feel that they need to be brave to come with such a topic to another person. So how can we help people to be brave enough and really to do that?
Well, we talked about the symptoms of depression. So let's say you notice that they let their personal hygiene go. It's a difficult conversation, but I would say ask them if they in fact are depressed. And say, I heard a podcast the other day, and they said one of the symptoms of depression was, sort of letting your personal hygiene go. And I noticed that it appears that that's happening, and I'm really worried. Are you depressed? Again, it's not an easy conversation, and if you can't ask that of the person you suspect, find somebody who can. And if they said they're depressed, here's what you do not say. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Turn that frown upside down. Have you tried fish oil? What you do say is, I'm here for you and I mean it. I know you're not crazy or lazy or self-absorbed. I know that depression is a mental illness. Now, here's the good news. With time and treatment, things will undoubtedly get better. I'll take the time. I'll help you get treated. Here's the question that's most difficult. You have to ask them flat out, are you having thoughts of suicide? And again, if you can't ask that and you're suspicious, find somebody who can ask that. But let's say they are not forthcoming that they're having thoughts of suicide. How would you know? Well, they talk about death and dying. You catch them Googling death and dying. Death and dying may appear as a theme in their artwork, their music, their writing. They begin to stockpile the means, medications, a weapon. They are getting their personal affairs in order, especially if they're giving away their prized possessions, because they want to make sure they go to the people they want them to go to when they're gone. Now, here's a counterintuitive one that's very dangerous. They've been depressed for a long time, and now they're happy for no reason. And you're happy because thank goodness they're happy. But what may be happening is they've decided time, place, and method for their suicide, and they know, here we go again, the pain they're experiencing is about to come to an end, and they're happy. That's the dangerous part. So let's say they are forthcoming, and they do tell you, I am having thoughts of suicide. What do you say? You say, do you have a plan? And if they say yes, you say, what is your plan? And if it's detailed, time, place, method, you want to get them on the phone with the suicide prevention hotline wherever you happen to be. In England, I think it's called the Samaritans. Here it's called the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And if you can't get them to pick up the phone, you pick up the phone and call the hotline, and the volunteer will do their best to talk the phone into the hand of the person who's suicidal. Now, the question comes up, what if they are suicidal, but the plan's not really well formed? What I would do at that point, I just ask them, are you going to kill yourself? And if they say no, I think this is the most important question. If they say no, I'm not, you ask them, okay, then tell me why not. Make them give voice to whatever's keeping them here. Their friends, their family, their animals, whatever it is, make them say it out loud. And of course, the question comes up, when do you call the police? If they're a danger to themselves or somebody else, an immediate danger, then you have no choice but to call the local constabulary. I'm not sure what they call it in Madeira, maybe Garda or something. But yeah, so that's when you call the police. So that's pretty much what I talk about on stage. I teach people, because if 8 out of 10 people who are suicidal are ambivalent, and 9 out of 10 give hints, that means the vast majority of people who are suicidal want somebody to step up. We can save a lot of people if you just are willing to step out of your comfort zone and ask those questions.
Yeah, so I totally understand that people often show signs that are obvious for people who are connected to the one who would try to commit suicide. So not going out of bed anymore, not washing himself, speaking about death, or hearing such kind of music that is about death, and feeling overwhelmed by life. And it is really to get the feeling of that someone is in depression, and then do whatever you need to do to speak with him and stop him from really killing himself. Yeah.
Yes, because the vast majority of people really want someone to interrupt. They'll say things like, this company won't have to worry about me much longer. Does that mean you're going back to school? Does that mean you're quitting the job? Or does that mean you're going to kill yourself? So, you have to, what I suggest to people is, it's observe the behavior and see if you see a pattern. Or if you ask somebody, are you depressed or are you suicidal? Listen to what they say, but watch their face and their body. Sometimes the face of the body will give away the true emotions. The mouth says one thing, but your face, there's an old joke in the U.S. Somebody's sitting there frowning, and I say, are you happy? Oh, I'm happy. The joke is, you should let your face know about that. Because sometimes they can't, they can say something to cover up, but their face or their posture or whatever gives them away that maybe, things aren't as good as they claim.
At the moment, we are more in a kind of digital time. A lot of people are in isolation, and perhaps they don't have someone that is a good friend or family member. So how can he get help?
Yes, so that's why, there are organizations in the U.S. where they offer help, mental health help, from no cost all the way up to where people have good insurance, and they pay a co-payment. But there are government resources here in the county, several organizations that, have peer-to-peer counseling, family-to-family counseling, offer classes. If you have a child who's schizophrenic, schizoaffective, they have a 12-week class for the family. So the mother and the father and the other siblings know how to talk to someone who has this issue. What to say, what not to say, how to find resources. And then they offer family-to-family counseling. So you got several families with young people who have schizoaffective, let's say. So they share resources. So the help is out there. The trick is getting them to reach out for it.
Yeah. And if people are now interested to reach out, for example, to you, as you are the expert in knowing about your own story, and you are. So how can people come to you and get in contact with you?
My website is The Mental Health Comedian, The Mental Health, or if you just type in the words The Mental Health Comedian, you'll find my website and all my social media. And on the website, I'm working on a series of 4 books on men's mental health. And because in the United States, 8 out of 10 people who die by suicide are men. And if you go to my website, The Mental Health Comedian, I narrate the first volume. I'm going to narrate them all, but the first volume of that book there's an MP3, a free one, download. You can download the unabridged audio book, and I'm narrating it. So you're welcome to go there and, put an email address. You can download the MP3. And eventually all 4 volumes I will have up on our website for free. Because, we sell them on Amazon, but I don't want anybody not to get it because they can't afford it. So I'll put them up on my website. And my email is there. My phone number is there. I tell people in the U.S., look, if you're suicidal, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. If you're just having a really bad day, call a crazy person, and here's my cell phone number. Because I'm less likely to judge. You don't have to explain anything about what's happening in your head. I get it. So it's often, that's the power of peer-to-peer counseling is you both get it. There's not a whole lot of, explanation involved because you understand where the other person is coming from.
Yeah, well, great. So I will write all the links down in the description so that it is easy for people to reach out to you. And if they are really in a situation that they need help, of course, they can call you, but also reading about what other people experienced and listening also to your TED Talks would be also a help because they can see that they are not alone and can perhaps resonate with the stories of other people, and this can give a change already in their life. Yes, and I have people write me from around the world. Every now and then I get an email or a DM from somebody who has stumbled upon one of my TED Talks and said, I was at a very low point and I came across your TED Talk and I thought, well, if he can make it, so I want you to know that I think, perhaps your TED Talk helped save my life because I felt totally alone. Then there you are on stage in front of the guy, the world, saying you're crazy. And who does that? And I've done it 5 times. Get ready to do number 6. So. Yeah, wonderful. So I'm really happy to speak to you today and bringing up this topic and helping people to help them to speak about their situation to other people. And this is really important to go on with that. Thank you very much. Yeah, especially right now, especially during the pandemic. It's, a lot of normal people are really struggling because they've never had to deal with this before. Definitely not, yeah. So I see that a lot of people coming into depression at the moment. And so this is really a very a topic that is very important at the moment for a lot of people. Yeah.
Yep. All over the world.
Yeah. So thank you very much for speaking with me, and see you on the next TED Talk, hopefully.
Yes. That's, the next TED Talk actually is about the mental health in the pandemic. It's called Social Distancing and Staying Sane. And I talk about, don't worry so much about your mentally ill friends because we got this. We're used to this, but let me teach you how to handle this. That's what the sixth TED Talk is about. So hopefully that will help people as well who are, generally normal and are struggling.
Yeah, please send me the link if it is recorded online somewhere as well, so I can add it to this information. Okay, then thank you so much. See you.
My pleasure. Thank you. I'll see you in Madeira.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Thank you for listening or watching my podcast, Holistic Creators. If you want to know more about how I can help and support you, have a look at my website, Spiritual-Changemaker.com. You can also join my Facebook group, Spiritual-Changemakers-Community. Stay tuned for the next episode by subscribing to this channel. And you also can check the previous